So regarding, I think all of these three questions, I would like to address them all together because I think they're all very related to each other in terms of growth, in terms of what people should be doing over the summer. I feel like Kevin Zen and Chelsea have done a really outstanding job of contextualizing the very concrete things that you can do. But in my opinion, there's actually another piece of the puzzle, which is how do you buy into the things that you spend your time on? How do you figure out what you really care about, what you really love? Granted, this is very hard. I'm not really claiming to fully understand the dynamics of how this works, but I want to try. Before I start, I feel like a lot of you might have the question, why does this even matter? Like, why can't I just do what all the other kids are doing? You know, I will listen to my parents, they'll give me something to do, I'll do it, I'll become really good at it, and I can get into a good college. So my argument is twofold. First of all, because college admissions is not just about college, it's about the rest of your life. I think high school is a very formative period for a lot of us, but also like the very practical consideration of you're better doing things that you really care about. So that's what I want to touch on very, very briefly. This won't be very long. I've kind of distilled what I think about this in terms of three major points. Some of them are slightly counterintuitive, some of them are less counterintuitive. But basically, my thesis is that to really buy into what you do and to find what you really care about, there are three things you need to be very careful of. First, be very careful and wary about saying no to things. Second, take calculated risks. And third, make sacrifices and stick with them. So for the first one, I think it's pretty intuitive. If you're careful about saying no, you just have a lot more surface area to encounter things that you enjoy. But after you encounter them, the next thing is like, how do I really figure out whether I like it? How do I really buy in? And the standard approach to this is just to sort of halfway involve yourself, to sort of like coast along, to do what other people are doing, to go to summer camps, have fun, but not really care about what you're doing. And what I would say to that is you need to take risks before you actually fall in love with something, before you can actually figure out whether you enjoy it. You need to go deeper. You need to go beyond what other people are doing. And I think coasting is honestly the worst thing that you could do. So you need to take calculated risks. You need to do things that might have a chance of blowing up in your face, but if it pays off, you'll get massive return. And then finally, in pursuing these risks, they won't be easy because by definition, risks are things that are uncertain and people don't like uncertain things. You should make sacrifices and stick with them. Don't give up too easily. This is a hot take. I don't know if most of you agree with this. It's like, I think the only real way to buy into something is to struggle with it. You really can't say that you love something if you haven't been through the worst parts of it. And so I think these three things, when you put them together, form a recipe that maybe doesn't always work for helping you find what you love and what you really enjoy doing, but I think it goes a really long way. And just to back this up, I'll briefly touch on points, and I think this answers Chelsea's question about what I think impacted my growth journey. Honestly, it was a lot of things, it was a lot of people, but several important components that I think tie back to these three main points. First of all, in middle school, I had an opportunity to learn about this really weird programming language called MIT App Inventor. It was just like a friend who had told me, yo, I want to do this project. Let's do it together. And I had a million reasons to say no. Like, first of all, what the heck is MIT App Inventor? It's this like very obscure language that no one knows and no one actually uses in the real world. Second of all, I was in 7th grade. I should have been hanging out, chilling with my friends, going on vacation, things like that. And, I decided to go with it. Like, oftentimes you don't really know where the gems are until you actually go and take a look for yourself. So not saying no turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. Because it turns out that MIT App Inventor is this block coding thing. If you've ever used Scratch, it's very similar. But it turns out to be super amazing for young kids to learn about programming. It doesn't require you to remember all the things you need to type into your computer. It's very intuitive and it's very kid-friendly. That's how I got my start with programming. I ended up building some projects that really inspired my confidence because they won some awards. And in high school was the point at which I really wanted to figure out whether this was something that I wanted to spend my life on. So rather than just coasting, doing things that were safe, I decided to take some risks. I decided to take on some research projects that might have been crazy to some people. I definitely remember when I told my dad about them, he was like, what the heck are you thinking? Because I didn't have access to a lab, a professor, But I decided to go with it. We bootstrapped whatever resources we had. And I have to thank my dad a lot for that, because he was also able to reach out to his friends, and he was also able to help out as well. But these are risks. Like, publishing a paper with a professor is boring. It's cool if you're invested in it, but on average, it's something that most people can do. But I decided to take these risks, and there were definitely things I had to sacrifice. I had to sacrifice hanging out with my friends and family over breaks, because I would just be grinding at these projects day in and day out. But it was something that I gradually figured out that I really loved. So it wasn't really about sacrifices. The sacrifice became fun at some point. Obviously, it's not always great. Like, you always have to deal with the uncertainty of whether you're going to win at a science fair, because science fairs are so random. There's a lot of non-skill luck involved, but it's just something that I learned to deal with. And I honestly think it's a better model for the real world than anything else. So I took some risks, made some sacrifices. It wasn't all pretty. And now I'm in college, and I think it's really paying off. I think one thing that I've been really scared of since I was little was being risk averse, because a lot of people tell you this is what brings people down. And I think by taking all these risks and, avoiding saying no to too many things has allowed me to find that I really love computer science. And so now I'm just doing a lot of research and continuing to take those kinds of risks. Like last semester at MIT, I dropped half of my classes to work on this research project that is still ongoing. And there was a lot of sacrifice, there was a lot of pain, but we don't talk about that. I think it's been a lot of fun. And, I think this is it's made me really happy to be, able to go through all of these different points in my journey and say, I didn't say no to this. I took risks, I sacrificed, and now I've settled on something that I could totally see myself spending the rest of my life working on.
To me, as if you were in this scene and you were describing this monkey to me, I was blind. I want you guys to describe it so well that I could draw this monkey. That is the assignment. And this is incredibly difficult for students. So what I'm going to show you now is a before version written by a student in 8th grade. And then we do this drill for about 10 to 15 weeks. And we tell them what to avoid, what to look for. We call them red flags and green lights. I'm talking a lot. So here we are. Here is Terry's example. And you guys can read it. I'll read it out loud real quick. The orangutan sits on its legs on a cracked wood stump with an old stone wall connected to it. Right foot inside crack, left foot supporting the body. The toes cling onto the edge, the orangutan's knees up to its chin. So we'll notice that students are often beginning sentences the same way. We also have some issues where students are simply explaining what happens instead of trying to pull you into the moment and tell you and show you how this happens. So we're moving a lot between the different slides. So some red flags that we teach students to avoid are passive voice. You'll see this problem right here. Its body is hunched to keep itself protected from the rain. Now, this is a really important sentence that I want to tease out, the last two sentences, right? These are sentences that I see so often in applications. I did this in order to show my leadership, right? The orangutan stares straight. I did this, and here was my intention. I waited for the rain to pass. Here's what I was thinking. And sometimes this is beneficial, but sometimes it is far better to show and use these really active verbs and put yourself in the moment as a character that we want to root for. That is a far better and more successful approach. So if we go to the next slide, I'll show you guys some techniques, some things that we want to avoid. And I had no idea what these rules were when I first got to Exeter. It was very strange. Nobody really told me. And we together, me, my friend, another student, we created this framework. And when I started winning awards, I shared this cheat sheet with some of these younger students. And these same younger students, after applying these techniques and avoiding the red flags, implementing green lights, they started winning awards after a year. And it takes time. I'm not going to sugarcoat and say within a week or two, students become better writers. It takes time. Often schools don't tell you this. Schools don't tell you that you should be avoiding is, are, was, were in your essay. They don't tell you that you should be avoiding adverbs or repetition or cliches. They don't tell you that you should be presenting yourself, solving a problem, and you should be utilizing really interesting sentence structures. You should be utilizing figurative language. Your job as a writer, as an applicant, is to stand out. So the reason these are red flags is because everybody does them. We are trying to stand out, and how we stand out is by presenting a unique solution to a unique problem we're solving, a unique situation, and describing that with very unique verbs. unique sensory details. And patterns and motifs, I really won't talk about it today. It's actually a pretty complex topic, but we can just, if you guys have any other questions about that, we can discuss it. So let's take a look at the case study on the next page. I want to make sure the other Kevin gets time to say his piece as well. So as you can see on the one on the bottom, we're using far more active verbs: perches on a tree stump, squats, right? Now this is a pattern: right arm leaning on its right knee, right hand gripping the stem of a leaf. It sounds very poetic. We use repetition, we use rhetoric. These are things that we teach our students so that their writing abilities stand out, so that readers catch these details. Its left arm wraps around its legs while its legs anchor onto the tree stump, preventing it from slipping off. We really don't even need the preventing it from slipping off because anchor tells us that. Another thing is that oftentimes students will just say the orangutan is sad, but we can show that it's sad by talking about this faint smile, by showing the hints of a frown. And we don't want to say that he's simply cold or tired, right? If we say his eyelids droop and there's wrinkles around his eyes, we immediately know he's tired. So this is a really great example, actually, because a lot of students will say, I was studying for this exam and it was 3 a.m. and I was really tired. It's so much more effective, right? To say you have these pencils sprawled out around your desk, right? And you're listening to music and you can talk about the time of day. There's tea that's sitting on your desk and it's cold, right? Those are far more powerful details that immediately I can picture the student. I know how long they've been working there. That is far more compelling and that is far easier to imagine and will instantly help you stand out, right, amongst the crowd. So that's what we're trying to do. Since Chelsea talked about case studies, I wanted to mention a few of our own. This is on the next slide. We have these pathways, writing pathways. The case study, we have student R. Student R was accepted to Brown, and he started taking lessons with us in 11th grade, which is really late. I actually recommend students start in about 7th or 8th grade, just because there's a lot of great writing competitions around like 8th through 11th grade, but it's okay. Better to start in 11th grade than never. So he started with analytical writing, and immediately we shifted him to picture assignments in the spring. Why? Because juniors are very busy in the spring, as you guys probably know. And picture assignments are actually really fast. They should not take more than an hour, right? You're just describing a photograph. Sometimes students write it in 45 minutes. So this is a very time efficient way for students to make the most out of this activity. And then between 11th and 12th grade, this student R was writing college application essays. And there is a mix of both. There is both analytical writing in these essays and there is creative writing. We're going to show our solution, but in the reflection and when we write supplements, there's naturally going to be more telling, right? There's going to be more insight. There's going to be more reflection. So that's why it's important to have a mix. A lot of students don't understand this. They think that their essay should just be telling. They don't have any showing. And it's true. You can get into Harvard, you can get into Yale, you can get into any school using telling, but it's very hard. I have read hundreds of essays, and I will tell you, if you can show effectively, it really greatly improves your chances. It is a hypothesis that I have tested. It works, and I would highly recommend it. We have another student, student S. He started taking sessions with us in 7th grade, and we really like to work with students over the long term. So we spent a year working on his analytical foundation. Then we transitioned him into picture assignments and creative writing in grade 8 to grade 9. Then in 10th grade, we love teaching different categories. So he was winning Scholastic Awards in flash fiction, short story. And just this past year, he won 9 awards for every single piece that he submitted in flash fiction, creative nonfiction, critical essay, short story, poetry,